In 1504, King Manuel V of Portugal makes an audacious request. He sends emissaries to Rome carrying a petition for Pope Julius II, not for land, not for absolution, not for crusade funding. He wants heaven to officially assign Portugal its own angel, a guardian spirit, a celestial patron to match the nation's earthly ambitions. And Julius II says yes. Portugal becomes the only country in human history to receive papal recognition for a national guardian angel. Not Spain, not France, not the Holy Roman Empire. Just Portugal, a sliver of territory on Europe's western edge, punching wildly above its weight. This is the story of that angel, but it's also the story of how the same figure gets rewritten, forgotten, and resurrected across 5 centuries, conscripted for battles terrestrial and spiritual, medieval and modern. Because the angel of Portugal doesn't just protect the kingdom, it becomes a mirror for Portugal's changing relationship with power, faith, and identity itself. Our story begins not in 1504, but 72 years before Manuel's petition, on a battlefield where Portugal's survival hangs by a thread. August 1385. Aljubarrota. King John Mort of Portugal commands an army of 6,000 men facing 30,000 Castilian invaders. His wife, Queen Philippa of Lancaster, has brought English archers. His general, Nuno Alvarez Pereira, has chosen terrain carefully, a narrow plain channeling enemy cavalry into killing zones. But everyone knows the math doesn't work. Castile wants to absorb Portugal, end its brief independence, erase it from the map. John's soldiers kneel before the battle and swear an oath to the Virgin Mary. Then they stand and fight, and somehow, impossibly, they win. The Castilian army shatters. King John orders the construction of a monastery to commemorate the miracle, Batalha, the battle monastery. And its cornerstone gets laid in 1386. Inside the chapel, on the east wall, the builders install an altar, not to Mary, though she'll get the main sanctuary. This altar belongs to someone else, the guardian angel of Portugal. The dedication is specific, deliberate. Portugal has survived, but it knows survival isn't permanent. You need celestial backup. You need someone watching from above. The cult takes root here, in stone and gratitude, long before any pope weighs in. Fast forward to 1495. Manuel III inherits the throne. Under his rule, Portugal explodes outward. Vasco da Gama reaches India. Pedro Álvares Cabral claims Brazil. Portuguese ships dominate trade routes from Lisbon to Malacca. The kingdom becomes an empire almost overnight, and Manuel understands something crucial about imperial legitimacy. You need God on your side, visibly and officially. Spain has Santiago Matamoros, St. James the Moor Slayer, patron of the Reconquista. Portugal has a local devotion to an unnamed angel, recognized by clergy but not codified by Rome. Manuel fixes this. In 1504, his diplomats arrive at the Vatican with the formal request. Create a feast day for the custodian angel of the kingdom. Give Portugal its own guardian, sanctioned at the highest level. Pope Julius II, the same pope who will commission Michelangelo's Sistine Chapel ceiling, grants the petition. The angel gets a feast day. Portugal gets celestial endorsement just as it's carving up the non-Christian world. The timing isn't coincidental. This is theological statecraft. The angel becomes part of Portugal's imperial mythology, the invisible hand guiding caravels across uncharted seas. But here's where the story fractures. Who exactly is this angel? Sources from the period start identifying the guardian angel of Portugal with Saint Michael, the archangel, heaven's general, defeater of Lucifer. Medieval and Renaissance art shows Michael carrying the Portuguese shield, his armor gleaming with the cross of Christ and the royal coat of arms. The conflation makes strategic sense. Michael commands heaven's armies. Portugal commands earthly ones. Michael casts down rebellious angels. Portugal subdues rebellious kingdoms. The mythology fuses, and suddenly Portugal's guardian isn't just any angel. It's the prince of the heavenly host himself, personally invested in Portuguese victory. But this identity never fully solidifies. Other sources refer simply to the custodian angel, without naming Michael. The ambiguity persists, unresolved, through the 16th and 17th centuries. Then the cult starts to fade. By the 1700s, devotion to the guardian angel of Portugal collapses. The reasons are tangled. Portugal's empire begins its long, grinding decline. Brazil becomes the economic center. Lisbon becomes peripheral. The Enlightenment spread skepticism about folk devotions and medieval superstitions. The Pombaline reforms after the 1755 earthquake secularize education and weaken church influence. The angel, tied so closely to Portugal's imperial peak, fades with the empire itself. The feast day lingers in liturgical calendars, technically, but nobody celebrates it. The Batalha altar stands, but pilgrims stop coming. For 250 years, the guardian angel of Portugal exists in bureaucratic records and nowhere else, a ghost haunting old texts. Then, in 1916, 3 children in a rural village called Aljustrel report something impossible. Lucia dos Santos, age 9, and her cousins Francisco and Jacinta Marto, ages 8 and 6, claim an angel visits them. Not once, 3 times, across spring and summer. They're shepherding their family's flocks in the hills outside Fátima when the figure appears, luminous and terrifying. He identifies himself as the angel of peace. He teaches them prayers. He instructs them in penance, showing them how to offer suffering for the conversion of sinners. Then, in the 3rd visitation, he gives them Holy Communion, the consecrated host appearing miraculously, no priest involved. The children describe him in precise, consistent detail. Translucent, radiant, young-looking but ancient in presence. He bows low, forehead touching the ground, and prays, "My God, I believe, I adore, I hope, and I love you. I beg pardon for those who do not believe, do not adore, do not hope, and do not love you." He makes them repeat it until they've memorized the rhythm, the cadence, the theology packed into each phrase. Then he vanishes. Nobody pays attention. The children tell their families, who dismiss it as fantasy or heat stroke. Aljustrel is poor, illiterate, backwards. Kids see things. But the children remember. They practice the prayers the angel taught them. They fast and prostrate themselves, mimicking his posture. And they wait. In May 1917, the Virgin Mary appears to them at Cova da Iria, a shallow depression in the hills. Over 6 months, she delivers messages about prayer, penance, and Russia's future. The apparitions attract crowds, hundreds, then thousands, then tens of thousands, culminating in the miracle of the sun on October 13, 1917, when 70,000 witnesses report the sun spinning and plunging toward Earth. Fátima becomes one of Catholicism's most famous Marian apparition sites, and the children become celebrity visionaries. But the angel, the 1916 prequel, gets buried. Most accounts of Fátima start with May 1917 and Mary. The earlier angelic visits become footnotes, mentioned briefly if at all. Lucia dos Santos writes about them later, decades after the events, but popular devotion fixates on the Virgin. The angel recedes again back into obscurity. Except the Church remembers. And in 1952, Pope Pius XII makes a stunning decision. He restores the feast of the guardian angel of Portugal to the Portuguese liturgical calendar, setting the date as June 10th, Portugal Day, the national holiday commemorating poet Luís de Camões and Portuguese identity. The revival happens during the Cold War, during the Fatima-obsessed era when Pius XII consecrates Russia to Mary's Immaculate Heart, when apparitions about godless communism feel urgently relevant. Portugal, under Salazar's Estado Novo regime, eagerly embraces the restoration. The angel becomes part of Cold War spiritual geopolitics, a bulwark against atheism, a symbol of Catholic Portugal's mission. And this time, the cult specifies exactly who the angel is, the same figure who visited the Fátima children, the angel of peace, the guardian angel of Portugal. Conflated still with Michael in some sources, but now carrying additional weight, the angel who prepared 3 peasant children to receive heaven's most important 20th century message. The prequel gets retroactively elevated. Walk through Coimbra today, and you'll find the statue in the Museu Nacional Machado de Castro, an archangel gripping the Portuguese shield, stone wings spread protectively. Visit the sanctuary of Fátima, and you'll see markers for the spots where the angel appeared: the Loca do Cabezo, the Pocho do Arneiro, the Pregueira. These sites don't draw the massive crowds that flock to the Basilica of Our Lady of the Rosary, but they're there, maintained, venerated. On June 10th each year, parishes across Portugal celebrate the feast day Pius XII restored. The angel appears on stamps, municipal crests, devotional cards. It's woven into civic life, a fusion of religion and nationalism that defies easy separation. So what is the Angel of Portugal? Start with the historical evidence, and you get a devotion born from battlefield gratitude in 1385, formalized for imperial purposes in 1504, conflated with Michael for maximum prestige, abandoned during decline, resurrected for Cold War ideology, and retrofitted to explain why heaven chose 3 illiterate children as messengers. Layer after layer, each era repurposing the figure for its own needs. Or maybe that's exactly how guardian angels work, not as fixed entities with unchanging portfolios, but as reflections of what communities need them to be. Portugal needed military victory. The angel arrived. Portugal needed imperial validation. The angel got papal recognition. Portugal needed spiritual revival. The angel taught children to pray. The figure evolves because the nation evolves, each generation remaking its guardian in the image of its anxieties and aspirations. The striking part isn't that Portugal has a national angel. It's that Portugal openly, explicitly asked for one and got theological permission. Other nations have patron saints, formal, canonized humans. Portugal has a celestial being assigned by decree, a guardian whose identity remains fluid enough to adapt across centuries. The ambiguity isn't a bug. It's the feature that lets the angel survive dynastic shifts, imperial collapse, secularization, and modernity. And here's the final twist. Portugal is still the only nation with this distinction. In 500 years since Julius II's approval, no other country has successfully petitioned for or received recognition of its own national guardian angel. Spain didn't get one. Neither did France, Austria, Poland, Ireland, or any of the dozens of Catholic-majority nations that might have tried. The Vatican never repeated the experiment. Portugal's angel stands alone, a singular case of celestial nationalism that the Church sanctioned once and never again. Why? Maybe because the precedent proved too dangerous. If every nation claims a guardian angel, heaven starts looking like the United Nations, competing interests, rival factions, celestial turf wars. Theology becomes geopolitics. Angels become proxies for earthly conflicts. Better to leave Portugal's angel as a historical curiosity, a relic of a moment when the Church was willing to bless empires with divine intermediaries. Or maybe because Portugal was simply first, and the window closed. Manuel I made his request at exactly the right moment, after the Reconquista, during the Age of Discovery, when the papacy was willing to carve up the world between Catholic powers. The Treaty of Tordesillas divided the globe between Spain and Portugal in 1494, just a decade before the angel's feast day was established. Heaven's bureaucracy followed Earth's. The timing aligned perfectly. After that, the moment passed. Empires rose and fell. The Church became more cautious about mixing nationalism with theology. And Portugal's angel became an anomaly, a one-time exception that proves the general rule. Except the angel didn't stay in the past. It appeared to 3 children in 1916 during World War I, in a country technically neutral but watching Europe tear itself apart. It taught prayers that emphasize belief, adoration, hope, love, and reparation for those who lack them. It prepared the ground for Mary's messages about peace, conversion, and the fate of Russia. The angel wasn't dormant for 250 years. It was waiting, watching, fulfilling its mandate as Portugal's guardian in a century when the nation needed reassurance that heaven hadn't forgotten it. That's the pattern. The angel appears when Portugal faces existential questions. Aljubarrota, will we survive as a nation? 1504, are we destined for greatness? 1916, do we still matter in a world ripping itself apart? 1952, can we hold on to faith in an age of atheism? Each crisis summons the guardian, and each time the form changes. Warrior archangel, imperial patron, humble teacher, Cold War symbol, but the function remains constant. Protection, reassurance, divine endorsement of Portuguese significance. The story ends, or rather pauses, in the 21st century. Portugal is no longer an empire. It's a small European nation navigating economic crises, secularization, demographic decline. Fátima still draws millions of pilgrims annually, but they come for Mary, not the angel. The June 10th feast day blends into Portugal Day celebrations, more cultural than devotional for most citizens. The angel has faded again, slipping back into semi-obscurity. But the infrastructure remains. The feast day on the calendar, the shrines at Fátima, the statue in Coimbra. The liturgical texts. Portugal hasn't forgotten its guardian angel. It's just not sure what to do with it in a secular age. And maybe that's the most revealing detail of all. The angel wasn't rejected or debunked or officially suppressed. It simply became less relevant as Portugal's self-definition shifted away from empire and divine mission toward European integration and pragmatic governance. Yet the potential lingers. Another crisis could revive devotion. Another apparition could reframe the narrative. The angel's identity has proven flexible enough to survive 5 centuries of radical change. There's no reason it couldn't adapt again, reimagined for a new century's anxieties, climate, migration, the search for meaning in technocratic modernity. Because here's what makes the Angel of Portugal different from patron saints and Marian apparitions. It was never fully defined. No single theology pins it down. No council decree limits its nature. It remains uniquely a guardian angel in the original sense, assigned to watch over, appearing when needed, shape-shifting to meet each generation's understanding. Portugal didn't just get a celestial patron. It got a figure that reflects Portugal back to itself, era by era, showing the nation what it believes about its own place in God's plan. And that reflection keeps changing, which means the story isn't over. The Angel of Portugal waits, written into liturgy and stone and memory, ready for the next moment when the nation needs to see itself as chosen, protected, watched over by powers beyond earthly measure. The only national angel ever officially recognized, guardian of a people who once asked heaven for help, and got an answer that 5 centuries haven't revoked.